What's up everybody, it's Jay with Short Point Creations, and in this video we're going to be starting like a 4 or 5 part series on creating these NFL logos. Now I've got the Buccaneers, the Saints, and the Panthers. So the NFC South is almost complete. I just got to do the Atlanta Falcons. So that's what we're going to work on right now. Now I made a video on the Tennessee Titans here, and it was just a quick overview of how I do it. I didn't really explain it in any detail at all or at all. So this video, I'm gonna release one every day, showing every day the steps that I take to create one of these logos. I'll go into detail about VCarve Desktop and other stuff like that. So check it out, here we go, follow along, come with me. So the first step when I'm doing a logo is I import it into VCarve Desktop, which I've done here for the Falcons logo. I select the areas that I want to create the toolpaths for. Now, here's a note. On some of the older logos, what I would do is, like, say for these red accents here, is I would cut out the red accent one day, fill it with epoxy, and then wait for that to dry. I wouldn't touch any of the other wood on the workpiece. The next day I'd come back and then I'd cut out this area and it would V-carve right up to that red epoxy, which looks fine. But at the end here of filling it with epoxy, the last thing I do before I put my top coat on is I plane this down to get all the epoxy to the same level. Well, when that happens, sometimes you can plane down a little too far, or just it happens normally. You'll see the actual wood divider between the two sections, you know, almost that V-wall that comes up between the two sections. So it's very small, you hardly see it, but it's there, and I don't think it looks that great. So what I've decided to do from a couple logos ago, and I'm going to continue to do for now on, is, say for example this area right here. This needs to be black in this area with some red accents and some white accents. But I could carve them like I used to. Instead, I'm carving this entire area. So we'll carve it out. And then I'll go back and I'll actually carve the epoxy right here instead of wood and fill that with red. This way, red epoxy meets up with black epoxy. There's no wood in between and no chance of it shining through. So that seems to me the best way to go. Yes, it wastes a little epoxy, but it's not that much. So it, you know, for how it makes it look so much better, it's worth it. So if I show you what it's going to look like here in the simulation, you'll notice I've already created the tool paths. I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill on my clearing paths and a 30-degree V-bit on my V-cut paths. My naming convention for multi-day carves, I show day 1, step 1, day 1, step 2, and so on. It just helps me process the cutting so that I know exactly what step to go by and it comes out perfect. So one thing you want to know, when I do my clear cut on day 1, step 1, alright, that's all cut out here. Then I go and I want to sharpen these corners here. So I need to do that with my 30-degree V-bit, so we run that. Now the next step would be to fill this with black epoxy. Now the next day, once that epoxy dries, I would move on to the next cut and then fill that with epoxy. But one thing in the simulation, it may look like it's not working right, but if you look at, say here for the red accents, I'm starting at a start depth of 0, which is the top of the workpiece, and I'm going to a flat depth of 0.15. So when I run this, you'll see it flashes for a second to show you the tool path, but then it looks like nothing happened. Well, that's because if this was left as a void, nothing would happen. But when you fill that epoxy back up to the top of the wood level, you're now starting at a 0 depth. So it works on the workpiece, doesn't work on simulation. So now the next step, since I have this all set, is I'm going to go ahead and run the carving and then fill that with black epoxy. So now what we're going to do is sharpen up these corners here and finish off this pocket here with a 30-degree V-bit. All right, so that's day one. I've got the black epoxy filled in. We're gonna let this dry on a level surface to make sure the epoxy doesn't run to one side or the other. And then tomorrow we'll cut the black and we'll fill in the white accents next. All right, catch you guys tomorrow.